My son looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You'll die alone." The room went completely silent. His wife folded her arms with a smug smile. My two grandchildren stared down at their phones as if hearing something like that was perfectly normal. Even the turkey on the dining table had gone cold, while everyone waited for me to react. I didn't. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't remind him that I'd spent 28 years raising him after his mother died from cancer. I simply looked at him, nodded once, picked up my old coat, and walked out of the house. That was the last time I saw my son for almost 4 years. People always ask how families end up like this. They imagine one explosive argument. The truth is much uglier. Families don't fall apart overnight. They rot slowly, like wood eaten from the inside. By the time anyone notices, the house is already collapsing. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 68 years old. I spent 37 years working as a civil engineer across Colorado. Long hours, weekend shifts, frozen construction sites, missed birthdays, missed vacations, not because I didn't love my son, because I wanted him to have a better life than I ever had. When my wife, Emily, died, Ethan was only 9. He cried himself to sleep every night. So did I. The difference was I waited until he was asleep before I allowed myself to break. I learned to braid hair for school plays before realizing he didn't need that. I learned to cook. I burned hundreds of dinners. Eventually I got good. Every morning I packed his lunch with little notes. "Love you. Proud of you. You've got this." He used to keep every one of them. At least that's what he told me. When he graduated college, I couldn't have been prouder. He landed a good job in marketing, met a beautiful woman named Vanessa. Smart, confident, charming. At least at first. The changes came so gradually I barely noticed. She always corrected him when he complimented me. "If your dad had managed money better, you'd have inherited more." She laughed when she said it. Everyone else laughed too. Except me, because there wasn't anything funny about it. Every dollar I'd earned had gone toward raising Ethan. His tuition, his first car, his apartment deposit, his wedding. I even paid for their honeymoon. But somehow I became the cheap old man. When they had children, I babysat every weekend, never charged a dime. I drove 45 minutes each way, bought groceries, cooked meals, fixed broken sinks, mowed their lawn. I wasn't just a grandfather. I was unpaid labor. Then one Saturday, Vanessa handed me a list. Paint the fence. Replace the garbage disposal. Watch the kids until 10. I looked at her. "When do I get to spend time with the grandchildren?" She blinked. "You are." "No," I replied quietly. "I'm working." That was the first crack. After that, invitations became obligations. Every visit came with chores. Every holiday came with criticism. Eventually, Ethan started sounding exactly like his wife. "Dad, you're retired. You've got nothing better to do. You should help family." Funny. Family only mattered when they needed something. The final straw came after I sold my house. Not because I needed money, because it had become too large for one person. Emily was gone. Every room echoed. So I downsized into a comfortable lakeside cabin. Peaceful, quiet, mine. When Ethan heard I'd sold the old house, he immediately asked how much I'd made. Not whether I was happy, not whether I liked my new home. Money, always money. Then came the request. Actually, the demand. "You should help us buy a bigger house." I smiled politely. "How much are you asking?" 400,000. I nearly laughed. Instead I asked, "Why?" "For the kids." Vanessa jumped in. "And honestly, you'll never spend all your money anyway." There it was. The sentence that revealed everything. They weren't asking. They were calculating my death. I refused. Calmly. Respectfully. Without anger. Vanessa's face changed immediately. "So you'd rather hoard your money than help your own grandchildren?" "I already helped." "When?" "Every day for 30 years. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "That's different." "No, it isn't." He stood. "So what happens when you're old and need care?" I shrugged. "I'll figure it out." He laughed. "No, Dad. You'll die alone." The words hung in the air. Sharp, cold, deliberate. Everyone waited. Maybe they expected me to apologize. Maybe they expected tears. Instead, I simply stood up. I hope you're wrong. Then I walked away. I blocked their numbers before I reached my truck. People think silence is weakness. It isn't. Silence terrifies people because it gives them nothing to fight. Over the following months, I built a new life. I joined a veterans volunteer group, even though I hadn't served. They needed engineers to help repair homes for elderly residents. I finally had time. Time to fish. Time to read. Time to laugh. Time to make real friends. One couple, George and Linda, became like siblings. Their daughter Megan often invited me for Sunday dinners. No expectations. No chores. No guilt. Just kindness. It felt strange at first, then it felt normal. Meanwhile, I occasionally heard updates about Ethan through mutual acquaintances. New SUV. Luxury vacations. Private school. Expensive renovations. Apparently they were doing wonderfully, until they weren't, because lifestyles built on appearances usually collapse under debt. I didn't know exactly what happened, and, honestly, I didn't care. One rainy afternoon, almost 4 years after I walked away, I was planting tomatoes in my backyard when my dog started barking. I looked toward the driveway. A black SUV rolled slowly to a stop. The driver's door opened. A thinner, older, far more exhausted-looking Ethan stepped out. He stood there for several seconds without moving. Then he walked toward my porch. His shoulders were slumped. His expensive confidence was gone. When he reached the front steps, he finally looked up. "Dad." His voice cracked. "I need your help." I stared at him without saying a word. For the first time in his life, my son looked afraid. "I need your help." The words hung in the air between us. For 4 years, I had imagined this moment in 100 different ways. I thought maybe I'd feel satisfaction, maybe anger, maybe the urge to remind him of every cruel thing he'd said. Instead, I felt calm. Time has a way of sanding down sharp edges. It doesn't erase scars, but it teaches you not to bleed every time you look at them. I set down my gardening gloves, brushed the dirt from my hands, and looked at the man standing on my porch. He looked nothing like the confident son who had once told me I'd die alone. The tailored suits were gone. His hair was thinner. Dark circles rested beneath his eyes. For the first time in years, he looked like someone carrying more weight than he could bear. "What happened?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. No hug. No handshake. Just an open door. He sat at my kitchen table, staring at the cup of coffee I'd quietly placed in front of him. The silence stretched for nearly a minute before he finally spoke. "I lost my job." I nodded. He continued. "The company downsized. I thought I'd find something quickly, but the market changed." He forced a bitter laugh. "Our mortgage doubled after the adjustable rate expired. Credit card debt kept piling up. Then Vanessa's business failed." He rubbed both hands across his face. "We're 3 months behind on the house." I listened without interrupting. And his voice broke. "Vanessa left. That surprised me. She said she couldn't live like this anymore. She took the kids and moved in with her sister." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he whispered, "Everything fell apart." I remembered another day years ago. The day he demanded $400,000 from me. The day he told me I would die alone. Funny how life has a way of repeating lessons until someone finally understands them. "So," I asked quietly, "why are you here?" He looked up. "I was hoping maybe you could loan me some money." There it was. Not "I miss you." Not "I'm sorry." Money. Again. I leaned back in my chair. "How much?" He hesitated. 300,000. I couldn't help smiling. Not because it was funny. Because history has an incredible sense of irony. "That's a very familiar number." He lowered his eyes. "I know." I folded my hands on the table. "Tell me something, Ethan." He looked up. "If I wrote you a check today, what would change?" He blinked. "I'd save my house. And then I'd figure things out." "No." He frowned. "You'd postpone the problem." His shoulders sagged. I continued gently. "When you asked me for money years ago, you weren't asking for help. You were asking me to protect you from the consequences of your choices." He didn't argue. Because he couldn't. "I won't do that." His face fell. "I knew you'd say no." I didn't say no. His eyes widened. I said I won't rescue you. There is a difference. I walked into my office and returned carrying a folder. Inside were brochures, business plans, and legal paperwork. Over the past 4 years, George and I had started a small consulting company helping rural towns repair aging infrastructure. It wasn't glamorous, but it was successful. Very successful. We're expanding, I said. We need someone with marketing experience. He stared at the folder. You'd hire me if you earn it. He looked confused. No special treatment. No executive title. No family discounts. You'll interview like everyone else. You'll start at the bottom. And if you prove yourself, I shrugged, you'll build your own future. Tears filled his eyes. I don't deserve that. No, you don't. But I'm offering you a chance. Not because you earned it. Because once upon a time, someone gave me one. He covered his face with both hands. For several moments, the only sound in the room was quiet sobbing. Then came the words I'd waited 4 years to hear. I'm sorry. Not rushed. Not forced. Real. I became someone Mom would be ashamed of. That one hit me harder than everything else. Emily had always believed Ethan possessed a kind heart. Maybe she had simply seen farther than I could. I blamed you, he continued, for working too much, for never being home, for making me feel like nothing was ever enough. I listened, but after losing everything, he looked around my small cabin. I finally understood. You weren't choosing work over me. You were choosing me over yourself. I closed my eyes for a second. Those were words I'd never expected to hear. I should have thanked you. Instead, I treated you like an item. He laughed bitterly through his tears. And when the money stopped, so did my respect. I nodded slowly. That's the most honest thing you've said all day. He smiled weakly. I know. We talked for hours. Not just about money. About grief. About his mother. About mistakes. About pride. About forgiveness. Neither of us pretended the last 4 years hadn't happened. Healing doesn't erase the past. It builds something stronger on top of it. A week later, Ethan interviewed with 3 managers. Not me. He answered every question honestly. He didn't mention I owned part of the company. When they recommended hiring him, I signed the paperwork. He started the following Monday. The first few months were difficult. He arrived early, stayed late, accepted criticism, learned. Slowly, I began recognizing the young man I'd raised. Not because he became successful again, because he became humble. 6 months later, he rented a modest apartment instead of chasing another oversized house. He sold the luxury SUV, paid off debts one by one. Every Saturday he visited me, not to ask for anything, just to drink coffee. Sometimes we'd fish. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch without saying much at all. Silence no longer felt like distance. It felt like peace. Nearly a year after he'd come to my door, there was another knock. This time it was Vanessa. She stood nervously on the porch. I owe you an apology. I simply nodded. She admitted that she'd encouraged Ethan to see me as a wallet instead of a father. She admitted she'd measured people by what they could provide instead of who they were. Whether she truly changed, only time would tell. But at least she had taken the first step.